name's Darren McClure, and I'm tweeting this, so everybody smile and wave. Okay. Get the message out. You know, Arab Spring happened because of social media, so get out in your networks. I live 2 miles north of the San Onofre nuclear waste generating station. A group of us, including Gene Stone, came and asked the city council to please set up a real-time radiation monitor for people to go to see what's going on, what's being put out from this plant. In the year 2010, they had 44 hours of atmospheric releases. That comes out to about 7 minutes a day. They also had 500 hours of oceanic releases. That comes out to about an hour and a half a day. For this to be working, it has to be leaking.
Coming, everybody. You coming to events like this really makes a difference. Don't underestimate how important this is. People see that you're coming, and they see this happen, and they say, oh, there's something going on there. And there's something about everybody joining together that makes something happen in the universe here that we don't quite understand. In fact, there is a creature in the ocean, a type of a jellyfish creature that decided to become an activist and has since occupied the intake filters of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Thank you for that. Yeah. So this mindless creature in the ocean has heard our message. Okay. So if that creature can hear this message, do you think humans can also hear the message? That's the question. This is the document from the Nuclear Engineering International publication. Now, in like October, the engineers from Southern California Edison wrote this article, and it came out in January saying about how proud they were of their changes. And there's two statements I want to read to you in here. This one right here, it says, at Songs, the major premise of the steam generator replacement project was that it would be implemented under the 10 CFR 5059 rule, that is, without prior approval of the U.S. Regulatory Commission. So in this article, they admitted that they were working around the system so that they didn't have to have any approval. And I'll show you in a second that they obviously did a lot of redesign. Now, further back in this in the same paper, they said, even though all the design and fabrication challenges were addressed, it was not known if the as-designed and fabricated replacement steam generators would eventually perform as designed. No kidding. They didn't perform as designed. So what's being done here is this is a big experiment. We're not even sure if these things are going to work. Well, why were they changed? Well, it turns out there's another recent article that appeared in about January as well. They say, well, these reactors were under maintenance. You've heard that. They were being maintained. The maintenance was because they were installing new turbines, better turbines to create more power. And in this article, it says the new steam generators, raise the amount of steam energy produced in the reactors. Their plan was to push the envelope, to make these bigger. And that's exactly what they did. They put more tubes inside. Now, there's one other myth I want to dispel here. So we're basically looking at the smoking gun. We know what was happening. They were working around the system to extract more, to get more money out of these things at our sacrificing safety.
Nuclear-free California. How does it feel? Keep it shut down forever.
I was very, very shocked to be approached before coming up here to the podium. Someone said, what? You mean the reactors in Fukushima are still melting down? And I said, well, yes. This event is ongoing. The government is trying to clean up. They call it decontamination. And they have huge, huge budgets going into Fukushima and surrounding areas to decontaminate. They call this decontamination, and basically what it is cementing over any soil, any garden patches, anything that is Mother Earth, cementing that over, basically washing down cars, washing down streets, washing down homes with high pressure, super hot spray guns. And then this radioactive sludge basically just goes down the street to the next unsuspecting neighbor. And it's a situation that's very, very difficult because, as we know, as most of us know, nuclear waste or the byproducts of nuclear contamination, nuclear isotopes, can only be moved. They cannot be. There is no such thing as decontamination. It became apparent that our food supply in Japan would be in many different ways contaminated. And so I went to my local elementary school board, the same school that I worked at for 10 years as an English teacher, fabulous rapport with the school. And I approached the principal as well as my daughter's homeroom teacher, and I said, I hope you're okay with this, but I don't feel good. After researching what's going into the school lunches, I don't feel good having my child partake in the school lunches. And a lot of that was about, they said it's safe. The Mambusho is the Ministry of Education, and what they say is law, and no matter what anyone questions, it is safe. So you eat what is provided, and if you don't eat, you're a traitor, and it's just the children are bullied, in some cases bullied, in some cases not. But I didn't want that for my children, but I wanted to assure their safety, so I made them a lunch every day. And the principal said, well, Mrs. Iwane, I respect your opinion, however, please do not share your research with any of the other mothers on the PTA.
#1 in the country for safety complaints. 5 years of fabricating fire watch logs. 4 years of not having the batteries connected to the backup diesel generators. A company that NRC says has a problem with its safety culture. A company that NRC says has been willfully violating safety regulations. Not just accidentally, but willfully. And a company that has created a chilling effect on its workers so that they are too frightened to bring forth safety concerns. My fear is that that company is going to push to restart one or both of those reactors, even though it is unsafe to do so. We're talking about a facility that has in it, when it runs, 15 billion curies of radioactivity. To put that in perspective, we measure permissible concentrations in the environment in picocuries. That's millionths of a millionth of a curie. And when the reactors are running, there are 15 billion curies. We could lose much of California if a worker was too frightened to bring forward a safety complaint, if there were large numbers of safety problems not fixed, if for years they ran, as they have, in violation of the fire safety rules. For decades, San Onofre was supposed to fix the problems with the fire risks at the site. And for years, they requested extensions. They requested delays. They requested waivers. As recently as March of last year, the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, gave them another extension and another vacation from compliance with the fire safety rules. And if there were a fire that took out both their primary and their secondary wiring, they would be unable to control the reactor, unable to prevent the fuel from melting and releasing that vast quantity of radioactivity into the second most populated zone in the country within 50 miles of a reactor. There are 8.5 million people within 50 miles of where we stand. And you all know that during the Fukushima accident, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission recommended that Americans in Japan evacuate out 50 miles. Do you know how far they require an evacuation from this facility? 10 miles. But you also know that evacuation is a fiction. In that first dome resides approximately 1,000 times the long-lived radioactivity of the Hiroshima bomb. Behind it, in that second dome, is another 1,000 times the long-lived radioactivity of the Hiroshima bomb. And in the two spent fuel pools, the pools in which the irradiated fuel is put after it's taken out of the reactors, there's another 10,000 times the long-lived radioactivity of Hiroshima. All told, a few hundred yards from us right now, there's about 20 times as much long-lived radioactivity as was released by the Chernobyl accident 26 years ago, and greatly more than was released in the Fukushima accident. To put that in perspective for you, the amount of radioactivity a few hundred yards from us, just in one of those reactors, was estimated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission 30 years ago to be capable, if it were released in an accident, of causing 130,000 immediate deaths of the sort that occurred in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, 300,000 cancers, and 600,000 genetic effects for about 1 million casualties were there an accident in just one of those domes in back of me. And that is before the population of Southern California got much larger, and before we learned that radiation is even more dangerous than was assumed back in 1980.
Plutonium fuel is a mixture of plutonium and uranium. It's called MOX. In Japan, it's called pluthermal. There was a shipment from Europe of this plutonium fuel, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fuel. Actually worthless, but anyway, Tokyo Electric paid for it. It arrived off the coast of Fukushima. My friends on the Greenpeace ship were surrounded by 50 Japanese warships, helicopters, etc. We knew that there were fundamental safety problems with that fuel. We knew that, in fact, the manufacturing defects within that fuel meant that there were even more safety problems. As a result of working with those citizens groups, we went to court against Tokyo Electric. We lost the court case, no surprise there. But the publicity and the controversy led the Governor Sato, to basically said, I'm putting a halt to this. And for 10 years, that fuel sat in the pools at Fukushima. Tokyo Electric, for some stupid reason, in September 2010, loaded that plutonium fuel in Unit 3 at Fukushima Daiichi. And we all know, 6 months later, that core melted down. The crisis in Fukushima, as you've heard here, as you've heard from Arnie, and you read, is far, far worse than probably any of us could imagine, but actually was not that bad an accident compared to what could happen. 80% of the fallout went into the Pacific. That's not good, but 80% of that fallout on mainland Honshu, that's what we heard earlier, the end of a large part of Japanese civilization. In terms of where we are today and where we were in Japan 14 months ago, 54 reactors operating in Japan. Next Saturday, there will be no reactors operating in Japan. That's 35% of the nation's electricity will not be coming from nuclear. There are no blackouts. There are no hospitals having to turn off operations, turning out the lights. The reason for that, unfortunately, is, of course, because Japan has been pushing nukes, is they don't have the renewable infrastructure, they don't have the energy efficiency infrastructure that is more than possible. So they're importing more gas, they're importing more oil, they're importing more coal. But the future is very clear for Japan, and it is achievable. Numerous studies now show that by 2020, Japan can be not just nuclear free as of now, they don't have to start up, but by 2020, with efficiency and renewables, rebuilding their economy, and at the same time meeting their carbon reduction targets beyond the targets of Kyoto set in 1990. That could be California. We heard earlier that our friends, the little crustaceans, have shut down Diablo Canyon, more spines than perhaps the NRC. With San Onofre down this summer, we know it's Edison's nightmare. There will not be blackouts.
Who will speak for the earth today? Who will speak for the children? Who will speak for the generations to come? My grandfather, Chief Orrin Lyons, asked that question some time ago, and it hasn't been answered in a good way, in a hard way yet. So it's up to us to speak for the earth here today. I'd like to introduce my brother, Mel Vernon of the San Luis Rey Mission Band of Indians.
I'd like to acknowledge the territory that we are on, the Hahashiman, the Waneno group.
On behalf of the spineless sea creatures, as an unofficial spokesperson, you're welcome.
Our message is getting out there. So we just need to follow through now. We need to stick together, spread the word. We are the seeds of change, and as we grow these seeds and nurture them with love and passion and commitment and responsibility, those are the nutrients to create seeds and plants and more seeds. And this is part of a process that we can all be proud to partake in, because we're going to be successful. And they can make steam here, but we're building a head of steam that you can't believe. And this is going to work. We're going to get it done, and we're going to do it by sticking together. So thank you.
What we need is more community organizers in every community. And our next speaker probably wouldn't say that, but she is a community organizer in her community, and it's Chrystal Coleman. And come on up. And this is what it takes. Chrystal came to one of our city hall meetings. The next thing I knew, Chrystal was speaking like a professional, and again, making me look ridiculous. But she has also heard the call, just like Gary. And this is how we can expand. Because if you've heard the call today and you live in some city where it's not happening or it hasn't been taken to your city council, then get other people who think like you, think like Chrystal, think like Gary, think like Friends of the Earth, things like Peace Resource Center, Citizens Oversight Committee, and start organizing. And it only takes a little bit of organizing to get another group started in your city, and then you can be surprised how effective you can be.
What we've been doing, I've been, working with a lot of these other members, these activist groups. We're going around from city council to city council. We're talking to our local politicians. We're talking to everybody who will listen, because the only way that we can have any kind of effect is to work together, to raise the awareness, because I truly believe that if people really knew the dangers of nuclear energy and how at risk we actually are, nobody would be on board with it. Because how could you? If you knew the risks involved, how could you consent to this? So it's been an honor to work with the people who I've met, and I really feel like we have the momentum built up that we will make a change. And the only option for us is winning this. So thank you all for coming out today, and thanks for your participation in such a vital and important thing.
Larry Agran is a council member with the city of Irvine, which just last week came out against San Onofre. And we're going to hear it directly from a source now. Larry Agran.
Well, thank you all. Thank you so much for being here. Hasn't that been what we've been told, and what every seismologist worth a reputation worth having has told us over and over again? Now, that might be in 10 years, it might be in 20 years, it might be in 50 years or 100 years, but they say Southern California is long overdue. We're constantly surprised by earthquakes. We're surprised by the Northridge quake. We were surprised by the Whittier earthquake. We didn't even know there was a fault there. We believe the Newport-Inglewood fault can generate only a 6.7 or a 6.3. It may hold some surprises for us. The San Andreas fault, the most likely site, we're told, for an 8.0 or larger, is close enough to do all the damage necessary to create a catastrophic failure at San Onofre. That is a fact. That is a fact. And to hear talk about, well, we really need to do, Southern California, as Edison says, we need to do more earthquake studies. To study what? To discover that somehow this little part of this fractured, fault-ridden part of the planet is safe? Let's be smart about this. Do not restart San Onofre this summer.
That's right.
Do not restart it ever.
5 days later, 1 mile from her home, the nuclear reactor at 3 Mile Island malfunctioned. We ignored it for the first day because we thought it was just media hype. And the local people were saying, it's not important because they're telling us it's not important. At the same time, as I have since learned, there were huge debates going on inside that reactor as to whether we should evacuate on the first morning. And then it was, no, let's not do that, people will panic. So we didn't panic. And on the second day, being a freelance writer, I thought, I'm accidentally at a story. Let's find out. So I went walking in the wonderful, clean Pennsylvania springtime air, taking deep breaths, while I tried to follow the story down and did not evacuate. And the third day, I was alone in the house with no means of transportation, when just like what happened at Fukushima happened in Pennsylvania. And that was a vehicle went down the street with a loudspeaker saying, stay inside, do not go outside unless you absolutely have to, keep your doors and windows closed.
They packed the fuel in so tightly in the pools that even they became afraid that there might be a criticality event. And so they convinced everyone that the safest thing to do was to move this waste into the dry casks. Well, the problem is that they can keep doing that, and they can keep on doing that forever. Now, they've already decided that they don't know where to put the dry casks. When they were building them, they told us without any question that that stuff was going to go to Yucca Mountain. And every time I objected, I was laughed out of the room. I was told, no, we've been working on Yucca Mountain for 10 years, 20 years, $10 billion, $20 billion, and the only problem with it is political. Well, that wasn't the only problem. The problem with Yucca Mountain was that it didn't work. It leaked water, it had earthquake issues, and enormous transportation issues to get the stuff there. So if you're going to worry about the spent fuel pools, which makes a lot of sense because our spent fuel pools have more radiation than the ones we're worrying about in Fukushima. And why is that? Because we run our fuel longer. So there are more fission products in the fuel. But if you're going to worry about the spent fuel pools, and if you're going to worry about the reactor, both of which are worth worrying about, please worry about the dry casks too. If there is a fire in a dry cask, and there's a whole row of about 30 of them sitting there, and they're huge, they're about as big as a steam generator. If there's an accident there, if an airplane, there's major air traffic routes above us. If an airplane were to accidentally crash into those dry casks, they're already outside of the spent fuel pool. We're worried about spent fuel pool 4 falling down in Fukushima, losing all its water and catching fire. Well, we've got dry casks that can catch fire too. So it's time to stop making more of this stuff. And we couldn't possibly have a better moment than needing about $1 billion worth of repairs that was done improperly and illegally. We have an enormous number of reasons. We have evidence. We've seen what happened in Fukushima. We've seen what happened in Chernobyl. We've seen 3 Mile Island, Santa Susana. Hanford is a mess. The Savannah River site is a mess. You name it. If it's nuclear, it's a mess. So thank you again for coming, and let's get this done. Thank you.